fresh back from Oklahoma City, TV analyst for your Sacramento Kings, Kayte Christensen. Kayte, good morning. It's Dave. It's Jason. Kayte, is it fair to call this a workman-like, a business-like 3-0 road trip? Good morning.
Good morning. See, I haven't talked to Dave in a few days, so he's being very business right now.
Kayte, let's keep it professional. We don't have a lot of time in this segment. The Kings went 3-0, and that's what everybody wants to hear about.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a really important trip. I mean, when you look at, I think the Clippers win, obviously, hands down, is maybe the most, important regular season victory in history. I mean, it was a historical game. Second night of a back-to-back, coming out of the All-Star break where you know that teams are going to kind of be gunning for you and you're trying to really make a statement, and you get the win over Portland at home. You go into L.A., massive win, and then you finish out the road trip with 2 wins in Oklahoma City to start the second, well, maybe the most important part. It's not the second half of the season. I hate when they say that, because it's really like the last third, but to start the most important segment of the season with the 4-0 win streak is really, really impressive by this team.
Kayte, I love the way that, like, the messaging, I guess would be the best way I would say it, from Coach Brown has been, even from the get-go, really fighting for the team early on when some calls didn't go their way, kind of stepping in front of the officials and saying, look, we just don't get these calls here, to where he is now to saying, look, we've got to play our best basketball, and saying, getting ready for the playoffs. I just feel like the team all believes now that, obviously record indicates that they are, but do you get that sense being around the team that they all believe they're good and that they belong in the postseason?
I think the belief has been there for a while, but what the continued kind of winning and progression, and like as Coach Brown says, and this is, yes, part of the messaging you're talking about, is trending in the right direction, right? You got to continue to trend up. I think as they continue to trend up, what you're seeing is just a deeper faith, a deeper belief, and the chemistry really just continue to kind of grow and blossom with this team. And so, I was there at practice the day before they came back from the All-Star break, and I'm sorry, my dad's with me. He's coughing. It's a family trait, but yeah. So he showed like a LeBron James like interview, and his messaging, if you will, was, if you don't think this man's coming for us, then you're crazy. He believes they're going to be in the playoffs, and he thinks that, they have the ability to be in the top 6. And of course, this was obviously before he got injured, but the messaging that he has been sending is, you're being hunted. And I love that. I love that mentality. And I loved last night's game in the sense that they were playing without De'Aaron Fox. And I felt like that was a really good exercise for them to kind of prepare for the postseason, because the postseason, they're not going to be able to rely on the threes as much. The defense is really going to kind of batten down the hatches, if you will. And what's really available more in the postseason is those mid-range shots. And the Kings could not get to the mid-range game last night. That zone defense really threw a wrench in things. And then they figured out a way as the game went on in the second half to find it, to get out in transition and to really use that as their weapon. But, I look at these little like 4 or 5 game series right now, and it's like what teams throw at them. Every little bit, it's preparing them in some way for the playoffs.
Kayte Christensen with us. We asked this question earlier. I want your answer. De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, the 2 most important offensive players on the team. Who is it, starter or bench? You have to pick one to be as consistent as the other 2 from here on out. Who do you think it's most important for it to be?
Yeah, for me, it's Malik Monk, for sure. I think that, they need to be able to rely on a bench scorer to really produce on a nightly basis. With the starting unit, it's packed with scores. I mean, you look at what Harrison Barnes was able to do last night without De'Aaron Fox. Kevin Huerter finally kind of had a nice little group going last night. Davion Mitchell played really well. It's easier in that starting lineup with 5 really great guys on the floor with each other for any one of them to really get going, because there's so many weapons around them. I think the important part is when they start getting into their rotation, right? And they've got like 3 guys off the bench with 2 of the starters, or 4 guys off the bench with either De'Aaron Fox or with Domantas Sabonis. They really need someone consistently to be able to produce. And to me, that's Malik Monk, because it's not even just like a production in a scoring way. The way he's facilitating and his energy and kind of the mentality that he brings to the game is really, really important.
Kayte, I know last night Coach Brown had a scramble. I mean, you lose Fox, and so you're doing some things differently. Mitchell moves up, and then the bench. It was a little bit clunky at times. We saw some offensive droughts, but even the game before in OKC, I remember a lineup might have even been kind of the closing lineup where it was Fox with 4, I would say, bigs. This team generally plays smaller, but it was Sabonis, Lyles, Barnes, and I think Keegan. Coach Brown's trying some different things, and maybe with a little bit of equity here in the standings, do you feel like he's, hey, look, I can experiment because we've got a little wiggle room right now?
Yeah, I love that you noticed that, Jason, because I do think that part of them preparing for the playoffs is Coach Brown also tinkering with some things just to see, given matchup situations, if someone is fouled out, whatever the situation is, so that he can get some legitimate time with some of these different rotations that normally don't play with each other, so that they can have a little bit of live game experience, right? It's different when you're doing it, in a practice setting, and yeah, you're playing hard, you're going up and down, but you also, everyone knows each other so well and each other's games and the plays. It's not the same as getting it in a live game situation. So yeah, he has been tinkering with the lineup, specifically that first game in OKC when everyone was available. And I like seeing it because it also gives us some insight into, he is forward thinking. He has won an NBA championship before. He is aware of what's going to happen in the postseason, even if most of the guys on this roster are not. And he is systematically kind of, processing it and preparing for what could be in the postseason.
Kayte Christensen with us. Kayte, what was different with Kevin Huerter last night? 20 points. Did you notice anything that changed?
He's really struggling with his catch and shoot 3. And I felt like, it's what he's been doing, which is getting into the paint, kind of those floaters, those little, 5 to 10 foot shots, because he has such great size at his position. Like, he is able to get by defenders when they come out. But when his 3 started opening up, I believe the first one he hit was a step back 3. And he's so much more comfortable when he kind of creates his own 3 recently. And a lot of time when you're in a shooting slump, it's because you need to literally create some rhythm. And so I think that was a big difference. But, he struggled on the offensive end at times just because of the pressure, and he had a lot of the ball handling responsibilities last night. But at the same time, he also had 9 assists. So, he had a larger role with De'Aaron Fox being out. And maybe sometimes they were asking too much of him, but it was a good experience for him to have. But I'm telling you, I'm not worried about his shooting. He's had a rough month of February, but I like that he keeps getting them up. Like, if he's a shooter that's been struggling for a month and isn't still taking his shots, that's where I would be really, really concerned. But he's going to get himself out of this.
Kayte, I want to ask you about Sunday, not the game per se, but the day in OKC. Obviously, a lot of attention for the G-Man, so well deserved. The whole day was awesome, what we were able to see back here, and the celebration that he got in the locker room. Then combined to the aftermath of the scare that you guys all had to get rushed to the hotel, kind of hunker down because of tornado warnings. What a wild day that was.
Okay, so I have a funny story. I left immediately after the game because I had some friends in town, and we had a dinner reservation, and in Oklahoma City, restaurants close very fast on a Sunday, right? So we had to get there by 9:00. So we get there just in time to put our order in, and the weather's increasingly getting worse and worse. And I've been getting the warning for the tornado warning since maybe the second or third quarter of the game. And we're sitting there and the sirens started going off. And you look outside, and we're in a glass building where, every single, wall is completely of glass. And it's just the wind and the rain outside is crazy. The sirens are blaring. And we kind of look around the restaurant, not a single person flinched.
Mm.
And we're like, okay, I guess we're all right. And we were totally all right. They just kept serving. They kept, bringing our food and whatnot. And it was fine. But I don't know exactly where, but I know it hit outside of kind of, the downtown area. But it was really random, from a West Coast person to get tornado warnings. Like, I've never been through that before. It was wild.
Well, the Kings have been a tornado off the All-Star break, 4-game winning streak, 3-0 road trip, big weekend with the Clippers coming in for revenge Friday and Minnesota Saturday. Thank you so much. You can see Kayte on the broadcast with Kyle and or Mark Jones for each game, including both this weekend. Thank you. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, fellas.
Thank you.
That's Kayte Christensen. We will take a break. When we come back tonight in the NBA, a big debut, and of course, a little watching of standings.
Standings watch.
We'll do that next.